Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and it is Sunday, so we are doing breaches of the week as always. And I'd like to say that I think this week is proving that we are in a data breach summer. I don't care what kind of summer you think it is, we are in a data breach summer. And as always, I would like to thank the following people that sent me a ton of this information. That would be Jay Dance, Barrett Peterson, Paul Hernandez, Steve Bethel, and Erica Strando. Thank you so very much. And if you have a tip for me, please send it my way, and I will give you a shout out here and also on my nationally syndicated radio show. And with that, let's dive right in and start with T-Mobile and an update on their massive data breach from 2021, because they just agreed to a settlement totaling $500 million in a class action lawsuit filed by its customers after they disclosed basically in August of last year sensitive data had been breached in a 2021 cyber attack. Now, in a court filing late Friday, basically T-Mobile said it would pay $350 million to settle customer claims and then spend an additional $150 million over the next few years to enhance its cybersecurity posture and obviously its technologies. Now, this breach affected 76.6 million people in the United States, according to the company, so you're not getting that much money out of them if it's $350 million. This breach exposed highly sensitive data, including customers' first and last names, social security numbers, driver's license information. Basically, when you signed up for T-Mobile and you gave them all this kind of stuff so they could run your credit to make sure that you could be eligible to buy a phone, all that information got stolen for 76.6 million of their customers. Obviously, that's a huge problem. We'll see where that goes, but you are entitled to compensation now. Moving on. I also want to give you an update on the massive California concealed carry leak. That was one of the finalies I did, I think it was last week or the week before, because now we've got some more information. An attorney from Upland, California, Brian Hanneman, is suing California Attorney General Robert Bonta after this leak exposed the contents of the state database of concealed carry permit holders across the across the state of California. Now, this is on behalf of 4 clients that he has, all women, he says, that are soccer moms, not some gun-toting rifle AR-15 people. These are just women that want to essentially protect themselves and their families when they're out and about. Now, in his lawsuit, Mr. Hanneman says that Bonta violated his client's Second Amendment rights to keep and bear arms, including through essentially the quote-unquote chilling effect that applying for a concealed carry weapon permit in the future may lead to their personal data being revealed to criminals and the public. Their Fourth Amendment rights to privacy were violated, California's constitutional rights to privacy as well, and also the California Information Practices Act of 1977, which limits the government's use of personal data. Not that they were using this data except to basically verify that you should be eligible for a concealed carry permit. Somebody stole this information, so I'm not sure how that one is going to play in. Now, he is seeking compensatory damages and a declaration that the state collecting this information violates both federal and state law. So we will see what happens here. Obviously, there are going to be gun rights advocacy groups like the NRA and others that are going to be coming into play here. We're going to see where this goes, obviously attempting to strike down these collection laws. And obviously, the state is guilty of this. There's no doubt about that. They came out and said, yes, this was a mistake. Obviously, this was a huge problem. And I did a lot of, I talked about that quite a bit. So you can go back and do that. Or actually, I think we just did that in InfoSec Court as well the other day. So if you are following all the stuff we're doing with InfoSec Court, we did that one as a breach as well, or did that one as a court case for the week as well. Moving on, let's talk about Medica, because more than 1,000 patients were affected by their data breach. Now, they found emails containing patients' protected health information was sent to an incorrect email address in error on May 27 of this year. Therefore, they had to alert 1,178 patients that were affected by this, which they did so in July. We're talking patients' names, dates and locations of services, dates of birth, medical record numbers, names of physicians, and description of services were all hit. So if you are a patient of Medica, you definitely want to check in. Moving on, let's talk about North Central University. They confirmed that they experienced a data breach after an unauthorized party gained access to student data contained within their network. According to the university, the breach resulted in names, addresses, social security numbers, and student ID numbers being affected for those students that were compromised. On July 15th, they filed a notice of breach. That's all I know thus far, but if you go to North Central University as a student, definitely check in. Moving on, let's talk about Bellingham Public Library in the state of Washington. They had a data breach that is now being investigated by the public library. The library said an earlier breach in the Whatcom County Library System basically revealed the data of 735 patrons basically having their data exposed. That data was then downloaded by a quote-unquote unauthorized source. It includes names, birth dates, along with library ID information. Basically, I'm guessing your library card. Now, the Whatcom County Library System database was breached in late June, where this patron data was compromised. So one, libraries do actually still exist. Go check out a book. And two, if you are in the Whatcom County Library System or the Bellingham Public Library in Washington, definitely check in. Moving on, let's talk about Professional Finance Company, or PFC. This is the massive medical supply chain breach. As always, basically healthcare providers are now having to disclose. This week, Shields Healthcare Group had to come out and say, we got everybody hit because of PFC, Professional Finance Company. So if you use Shields Healthcare Group for all your healthcare needs, you definitely want to give them a call. Moving on, let's talk about Lawson Products. They confirmed that they experienced a data breach after an unauthorized party gained access to sensitive consumer data in their network. And according to them, we're talking names, addresses, social security numbers, driver's license numbers, state issue identification numbers, passport numbers, as well as financial account information and medical information. That sounds awful lot like employee information. On July 14th, they declared. So if you work for Lawson Products, I actually think they make barbecue sauce. Now that I'm thinking about it off the top of my head, you definitely want to check in. I cannot remember if their barbecue sauce is good or not. Moving on. Let's talk about AUS, or Allied Urological Services. They confirmed they had a data breach as well. Sensitive patient information was exposed. And so we are talking names, addresses, financial account information being compromised. Current estimates place the total number affected at 52,981 per their breach disclosure earlier this month. So heads up to you, Allied Urological Services. Patients, you may be entitled to compensation for what I'm assuming is a very uncomfortable visit to your urologist. Moving on, let's talk about Gas South. They also had a data breach, and they confirmed the breach, but they have not announced what type of information has been compromised just yet. However, it is looking like this information, based off of the state requirements for disclosure, is probably going to be social security numbers, driver's license numbers, and or bank or credit card information, and all that kind of stuff. They just filed that official notice of breach on the 15th of this month, so we're going to see where that goes. But if you have anything to do with Gas South, and again, given that information, it looks more on the employee side, definitely check in. Moving on, let's talk about Benson Health in North Kakalaka. They recently experienced, or I should say started notifying 28,913 of their patients that their protected health information was potentially accessed during a cyber attack on May 5th of 2021. That's right, we're over a year old on this one. Now, this was confirmed on July 7th of this year, and that data set includes names, birth dates, social security numbers, and health and treatment information. Notification letters were sent out on July 12th of 2021, of this year, actually, more than 14 months after the data breach was detected. So if you use Benson Health in North Carolina, you know what to do. Moving on, let's talk about All One Health in the state of Pennsylvania. They got hit with a business email compromise attack that was detected in February of this year, when wire transfers intended for one of its payees were discovered to have been routed fraudulently to another bank. Now, the investigation of the incident revealed the email account of an employee had been compromised and used in the business email compromise attack to request fraudulent transfers. A forensic review was then conducted. All One Health said the email account contained the protected health information of 13,669 individuals. We're talking names, addresses, dates of birth, driver's license numbers, social security, and limited health information as well. So if you're a patient of All One Health out of the state of Pennsylvania, you know what to do as well. Moving on, let's talk about Sonic, the fast food restaurant chain. This is actually an update because they just agreed to pay up to $5.73 million as part of a settlement resolving claims from financial institutions that a 2017 data breach forced financial institutions to issue new payment cards to their customers. That's right, credit cards got ripped off. The fraudsters obviously started using the credit cards to buy stuff. Now, consumers with American Airlines Federal Credit Union, Redstone Federal Credit Union, and Arkansas Federal Credit Union, whose cards were affected by this data breach, are eligible to receive one of the following. So, if you belong to any one of those credit unions, You may have money coming to you if you've ate at a Sonic and used your card. The first one is a reissuance payment, meaning they're going to give you $1 for each payment card reissued in light of the Sonic data breach. So your credit card got hit, they gave you a new card, you get $1. Congratulations. Also, fraud payment. You would possibly get $1.50 for each payment card that experienced fraud during the 4-week window after the cards were placed on alert in light of the data breach. Class members who submit valid claim forms will be eligible to receive these payments from the remaining $3 million of the 5.73, which obviously covers fees, the lawyers, all that kind of fun stuff. So there you go. Odds are you're going to get $1, maybe $1.50, and if you had a whole bunch of fraud, $20. We'll see. Good luck to all of you Sonic patrons. Moving on, let's talk about the game, the online gamer app Neopets. And I quote, Neopets recently became aware that customer data may have been stolen. It appears that email addresses and passwords used to access Neopets accounts may have been affected. We strongly recommend that you change your Neopets password. If you use the same password on other websites, we recommend that you change those passwords as well. Good advice from Neopets. Sucks you got breached. That's all I know right now. But if you play that game, or your kids more likely play that game, go change their passwords. Make sure that password isn't used anywhere else. Moving on, we have to talk about an unnamed Croatian telecom company because the Croatian DPA, or Data Protection Agency, just fined that company 285,000 euros. Now, the company suffered a data breach. The attackers managed to access information from about 100,000 basically data, quote-unquote data subjects. And during the investigation, the DPA found that such a breach was facilitated by the company's failure to implement adequate technical and organizational security measures for the processing of personal data. For example, the processing systems lacked access restrictions, meaning you could probably just walk right in and take a look at it. And assessing the fine, it was taken into basically what they're calling an aggravating account, that the company is one of the leading telecommunications companies in Croatia, and therefore, due to the high volume of data that they process, the risk of the attack was also to be expected, meaning they should have planned for this better. And so for that very reason, the company should have paid more attention to ensuring that their security was up to snuff. So there you go. We are talking about 285,000 euros, which is about $285,000 US. It's kind of interesting now that they're aligned. Moving on, let's talk about the Oklahoma City Housing Authority, or OCHA, O-C-H-A. Quote, we could not rule out the possibility that an unauthorized actor accessed OCHA email accounts between November 30th, 2021 and December 21st, 2021. That's what we know, but we also know that name, social security number, driver's license information, and government identification, financial account information, and or medical health information may have been involved in this. So if you have anything to do with OCHA, the Oklahoma City Housing Authority, you definitely want to check in. Moving on, let's talk about building materials giant Knauf out of Germany. They own something like 80% or more of the entire wall bracket industry or something like that. They're huge. Now, the Knauf Group has announced that it has basically been the target of a cyber attack that disrupted their business operations and forced their global IT team to shut down all of their IT systems to isolate the incident. Now, this attack took place on the night of June 29th, and as of July 19th, when this article was published, they were still in the process of forensic investigation, incident response, and remediation. Black Basta, that is the ransomware gang basically involved in this, is claiming responsibility. Samples on their site of email communications, user credentials, employee contact information, production documents, and ID scans were all available to download. So we will see what happens with Knauf, but if you have anything to do with them or they're in your supply chain, you might expect delays. Moving on, let's talk about the plucky little town of Frederick, Colorado, because the police department of Frederick says it's investigating claims that the town government was hit with a ransomware attack. This past Thursday, Lockbit basically took responsibility for this. And basically, this is a town of about 15,000 residents, and the spokesperson for the town said that they had received notice of a potential ransomware attack, but that's all we know right now. So assuming whatever information the government of Frederick, Colorado has, they probably have as well. Thank you very much, Lockbit. Same with the Canadian town of St. Mary's in Ontario. Lockbit strikes again, 7,500 residents, and this is a problem that we have. I've talked about this before. These small towns, I don't care if it's the United States or Canada, usually don't have the budgets in their government to have actually hardened and resilient cyber defense strategies, and that is a problem worldwide. These small governments very susceptible to attack, obviously harming or potentially having issues for the citizens of both St. Mary's, Ontario, and Frederick, Colorado. So there you go. Moving on, let's talk about Flipkart's Clear Trip. Now, Clear Trip is one of the most popular travel booking platforms in India, and they just confirmed that they had a data breach after attackers claimed to have posted stolen data into the dark web. Exact details of that stolen data are not immediately known, according to what I've read. Quote, apart from files seemingly having customer information, revenues, etc., there are also files including GST on advanced working, which raise questions about the involvement of some insider. That is according to Sunny Nihra. He is a security researcher looking into this. So we'll see where that goes. But if you use ClearTrip out of India, your data may have been involved. Moving on, let's talk about the Oklahoma State University Center for Health. This is actually an update on their 2018 breach because they just paid $875,000 US to the federal government to settle their violations for HIPAA compliance. The health center also agreed to implement a corrective action plan that included 2 years of monitoring for those patients. 280,000 patients from Oklahoma State University Center for Health were affected. So heads up to you if you're in Oklahoma and use them. Moving on, let's talk about the Williams Company in Florida. Apparently an employee who quit his job downloaded and stole a ton of confidential information before he left. On his way out the door, the ex-employee obtained documents such as the company's bank account statements and tax returns, as well as 401k information containing employees' names, social security numbers, birth dates, and their compensation, according to federal court documents. Williams Company Management Group notified law enforcement. The company said in a federal lawsuit filed this week against its former employee, Paul Comazzi. Now, on January 28th, Comazzi actually resigned from Williams. 2 months later, the company learned about the data breach and that Comazzi had shared this information with quote-unquote non-executive employees. Comazzi's former co-workers warned the company that this had happened, according to the lawsuit. Comazzi had misused a colleague's login to access confidential and proprietary business information, according to a statement by the Williams Company. Insider threat is a real thing. This is living proof of it. There you go. You've got to make sure you've got good security controls and training. Now, Comazzi, from what I understand, was also on the IT side of things, which means he had more in-depth access than your average employee. But then that also means there should be other employees in the IT side of things that are able to audit essentially what Comazzi is doing, therefore making sure that fraud is not committed. And here we are, theft of information. And finally, we have to talk about the digital security giant Intrust, because if you didn't know, Intrust is a security firm focused on online trust and identity management, offering a wide range of services, including encrypted communications, secure digital payments, ID issuance solutions, and on and on and on. They are a major player in this game, and they just confirmed that they suffered a cyber attack where threat actors breached their network and stole data from their internal systems. Now, depending on what data was stolen, this attack could obviously impact a large number of critical and sensitive organizations who use Intrust for identity management authentication. This includes U.S. government agencies such as the Department of Energy, Homeland Security, Treasury, Health and Human Services, Veteran Affairs, Agriculture, and many more, not to mention other governments, massive corporations. This is another potential SolarWinds. Huge thing. And I quote, while our investigation is ongoing, we have found no indication to date that the issue has affected the operation or security of our products and services, which are run in separate air-gapped environments from our internal systems and are fully operational and in trust. I hope you are not lying to us here, because the last thing we need is another SolarWinds. It is hard enough for cybersecurity professionals to get the word out when essentially you're looking at a population that's like, well, it's going to happen anyway, so why the hell should I care? These are the things that make it very difficult. So Intrust, I hope you get back on your feet. I hope it's a minor thing. I hope you really are air-gapped in your operational systems. I have no reason to doubt you on that. I just really hope it's true. And the other, finally, we've got for you today is Cambridge Analytica. If you remember that 2018 mess, we are still seeing fallout from that. And here's what's going on. Now, calling themselves Meta, CEO Mark Zuckerberg has agreed to testify in a lawsuit over Facebook's Cambridge Analytica data breach, and the current COO, who is leaving Meta in the fall, has also asked to provide testimony, according to multiple sources, although I'm cribbing this one from Gizmodo. Now, Zuckerberg will be deposed for up to 6 hours and Sandberg for 5 hours in September, according to a filing Tuesday in the District Court, Northern District of California, San Francisco Division. That's obviously they're in Silicon Valley, so it's right there. Now, Javier Olivan, Meta's chief growth officer, who is taking over as COO, will also be deposed for 3 hours as well. Depositions take place privately, so there's no indication that either Zuckerberg or Sandberg would take a stand in a potential trial. The depositions stem from a 2018 California class action lawsuit over the misuse of user data. And misuse they did over and 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 over, and not just Cambridge Analytica. My God, there should be a litany of lawsuits going on constantly against Facebook for this. Now, Washington, D.C., Attorney General Karl Racine also sued Facebook over its data practices in 2018 after it was revealed that the personal data of 87 million Facebook users in the United States were exposed during a breach in 2015. Researchers at Cambridge Analytica, which were affiliated with the Donald Trump presidential campaign, Senator Ted Cruz's campaign before that, et cetera, may have misused the data during the 2016 presidential election. We already know that to be true as well. Steve Bannon, who's a close ally with Donald Trump, was also caught up in that as well, as he was, I believe, an investor or a partner in Cambridge Analytica, which is now defunct. Now, these cases are ongoing, and in May, Zuckerberg was sued separately by AG Racine with the complaint alleging that Zuckerberg was directly involved in decisions that led to the data breach. Zuckerberg was also required to testify before Congress on the data breach. It was a hot flippin' mess of it back in 2018. He actually made money sitting in front of Congress while he was supposed to be getting grilled on his horrible data security and privacy practices. I tweeted out, that day that if all of the senators had basically let their grandkids question Zuckerberg, he would have been screwed. But they had no idea how to talk to this guy, how to ask him questions. One of them even asked how he made money, for God's sakes. You're going to waste your 5 minutes on that? I digress, so that still actually burns the bejesus out of me. So, let's keep going. In 2019, Meta, then obviously known as Facebook, reached, at the time, unprecedented $5 billion settlement with the U.S. Federal Trade Commissioner, FTC, over this data breach. Meta has declined to comment publicly on this right now in terms of these new depositions that Sandberg and Zuckerberg are going to face. So we'll see where this goes, but obviously that's a huge thing. I will keep you up to date on all of these things. Those were your breaches of the week. It's getting longer out there again, and again, we are in data breach summer, so let's just say you were affected. And if you're a Facebook user in the United States, I'm sure you were affected by Cambridge Analytica. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter, where you will be data mined, as you know, and please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please attempt to stay private. Thanks, everyone.